For today's lesson, we will be discussing about rules of inferences. So let's discuss first what is an argument. An argument in propositional logic is a sequence of propositions. So for example, we have here two premises. So we have premise 1, if it is raining, then the sky will be cloudy. Then we have premise 2, it is raining. Then there is now a conclusion, therefore the sky will be cloudy. So this is an example of an argument. So in an argument, you should have premises and it should be followed by a conclusion. An argument is valid if the truth of all its premises implies that the conclusion is true. So in argument, we assume that the premises are true and it should be implied with a true conclusion as well. Now, in order for us to write conclusion, we have what we call as the rules of inferences. So what is an inference first? It is a process of deriving logical conclusions from premises known or assumed to be true. So in writing again a conclusion, we assume first that the premises are true or known to be true. And then after that, we will be deriving now a conclusion based on those premises. And to do that, we will be applying the different rules of inferences. So let's discuss them one by one. So first is what we call as the modus ponens. So here we have two premises. So the first premise is an implication. If P, then Q. And for the second premise is we have P, or the antecedent of our first premise. And from these two premises, we can write a conclusion which is Q, or the consequent of our first premise. So for example, if Martina went to the mall, then she went to have coffee. So in this case, the first premise is an implication that if Martina went to the mall, then it implies that she went there to have coffee. So Martina went to the mall is P, she went to have coffee is Q. So what we have here is if P, then Q. Next premise that we have, Martina went to the mall. So this is now P. So we have now an implication and then we have another premise which is the antecedent of the first premise. Therefore, we can conclude that she went to have coffee. So we're able to write our conclusion based on the premises and we applied the modus ponens. Second is what we call as the modus tollens. So in this case, what we have is two premises. So the first one is still an implication. If P, then Q. And then the second premise here is not Q. So that means we are negating the consequent. Therefore, our corresponding conclusion with that is not P. Okay? Because we assume here that yes, the consequent will not be happening. So therefore, the antecedent, the corresponding antecedent of that should not happen as well. Example, if I crave for sweets, then I eat ice cream. So this is in form of if P, then Q. I don't eat ice cream. So if I don't eat ice cream, that means I am not craving for sweets. So that will be our conclusion. So this first premise, if I crave for sweets, then I eat ice cream. So it's in the form of if P, then Q. The second premise, I don't eat ice cream. This one is not Q. So that only means I am not craving for sweets because I don't eat ice cream. So that is modus tollens. Next, what we have is conjunctive simplification. So in conjunctive simplification, the premise that we have is this, which is P and Q. So this one is a conjunction. So, and that's what we know in conjunction, we consider both of the statements. So the conclusion here is it can be P or Q. Example, Lulu will eat his breakfast and play with Lobu. So in this case, what we have is Lulu will eat his breakfast is P and play with Lobu, that is Q. So Lulu will play with Lobu. So what we have is P and Q. Now, since we assume that the premise is true, and as what we know in conjunction, the statement or the conjunction will only be true if both of the propositions are true. So therefore, we can say that Lulu will eat his breakfast Or, therefore, Lulu will play with Lubu. So, these are the two conclusions that we can obtain from the given premise, which is Lulu will eat his breakfast and play with Lubu. So, we can just separate these two and then write them as our conclusion. Next is we have disjunctive simplification. So, in this case, what we have is first, in the first premise, we have P or Q. So, since it's disjunctive, that means we are dealing with disjunction, or we have or. And then the second premise here is we have P or not Q. And then after that, therefore, our conclusion will only be P. Okay? So what happens here is that, as what we know in disjunction, as long as one of them is true, then the given conjunction will be true as well. So as long as one of them is true, then the given disjunction will be true as well. But here, since we assume that Q is already false because we negate it, therefore, whatever is left, it should be true. So that's why our conclusion is P. Example, either there will be a lecture today or all the students will be happy. So there will be a lecture today is P. All the students will be happy is Q. So either there will be a lecture today or all the students will be happy. Second premise is that either there will be a lecture today or all students will not be happy. So what we have here is P or not Q. Since we're just considering either there will be lecture today or students will be happy, but since in our second premise, it was mentioned that students will not be happy. So therefore, our conclusion is that there will be a lecture today. So what we have here now is just P. So that is how you apply the disjunctive simplification. Next is we have conjunctive addition. So here what we have is we have two premises that are simple propositions. So first is this one. Let's say we have P. So it's only a simple proposition. And we have another premise which is again a simple proposition. Now, since we assume that these two are true, so our conclusion can be P and Q. So we just have to connect the two using the connective end so that it will become a conjunction. Example, today is holiday. The other one is Joshua plays basketball with his friends. So these are two simple propositions and they are our premises. Now using the conjunctive addition, since we assume that these two are true, we can write our conclusion as, therefore, today is holiday and Joshua plays basketball with his friends. So our conclusion will also be true because, as what we know with conjunction, it can only be true if both of the statements are true. So again, this will be our conclusion. Today is holiday and Joshua plays basketball with his friends. Now, we also have what we call as disjunctive addition. Now, for disjunctive addition, so since it is disjunctive, again, we are dealing with disjunction or we use the connective or. Now, in this case, what we have is we only have one premise, which is P or a single proposition. Now, we assume this to be true. We can add another proposition to it and we connect it using or. And you can add anything that you want because as long as P is true, the conclusion will also be true. Okay? Because again, when we use or in disjunction, either of the two should be true and we can still assume that the whole compound proposition is true. So example, today is holiday. So if this is given to you, then you can add anything that you want, any proposition that you think of, as long as you connect it using the connective or. So that will still give us a true conclusion. So let's say we have this. Therefore, today is holiday or Joshua plays basketball with his friends. So what we added here is Joshua plays basketball with his friends. So even though this is false, but since we assume that this is true, therefore the conclusion itself will also be true. So again, that is disjunctive addition. Next is we have disjunctive syllogism. Now in disjunctive syllogism, what we have is two propositions or two premises. First is a disjunction, so P or Q, and then the second one is a negation of Q or of the second proposition from the first premise. So if this is already false, because it's a negation, so therefore our only choice is the P. So we have here P as our conclusion. Example, I will eat my breakfast or take a bath. So that's the first proposition or the first premise. I will not take a bath. So if you said that I will eat breakfast or take a bath, and then it's followed by I will not take a bath, therefore your conclusion should be, therefore I will eat my breakfast, because you already scraped the fact that you will take a bath. So what's left is that you will eat breakfast. So what we have here is P or Q. This one is not Q. So therefore, your conclusion should be the P statement. And then what we have, what we call as the hypothetical syllogism. So in hypothetical syllogism, so we have two premises that are both implication. So we have if P then Q, and then the second one we have here if Q then R. So as you notice, the consequent of the first premise is the antecedent of the second premise. Now, to conclude, what we can do is just get the antecedent of the first and the consequent of the second and then write them as an implication. So example, if you want to buy something, then you need to save up. If you need to save up, then you need to budget your money. So applying the hypothetical syllogism here, therefore, if you want to buy something, then you need to budget your money. It's like a chain of events. So if you want to buy something, then you need to save up. If you need to save up, then you need to budget your money. So that means if you want to buy something, then you should budget your money. Okay, so we applied here the hypothetical syllogism. Another one, second to the last, is we have the constructive dilemma. So in constructive dilemma, we have here three premises. The first two are both implications, and then the third one is a disjunction. So in constructive dilemma, so first we have if P then Q. And then the second one, we have if R then S. So as you can see, comparing it with the last example, this two are not connected with one another. So they have distinct antecedent and consequent. And then on the third one, what we have is P or R, which means either of the two antecedents might happen. Okay, because again, we assume it to be true. Now, since that those are our premises, so what we can have as our conclusion is that Q or S. Because from the third premise, we assume that any of the two antecedents might happen. So that means either of the two consequent might happen as well. So example, if I am running, then I am happy. So that is the first premise. If I am sleeping, then I am dreaming. I am running or I am sleeping. So as what we know, if you are running, then you're happy. If you're sleeping, then you're dreaming. And then, you are either running or sleeping. So that means, therefore, either I am happy or dreaming. So that will be our conclusion because two of our antecedents might happen, or either of the two might happen. So that means the conclusions from our implications might happen as well. So that is a constructive dilemma. And lastly, for the destructive dilemma, so we again have here three premises. The first two are implications, same as with the previous example, the two are not connected. And the third one, the third premise that we have here, which is this one, not Q or not S. This means that either of the two consequence might not happen. So what does it mean? So if the consequence will not be happening or is not true, therefore the antecedents should be not true as well. So that's why the conclusion is not P or not R. So example, if I'm running, then I am happy. If I'm sleeping, then I am dreaming. So, and I am not happy or I am not dreaming. So since you are not happy and you are not dreaming, therefore I am not running or sleeping. Okay, because again, the two from the third premise, this one right here, it was mentioned that our consequent from the first two premises might not be happening. So therefore, for us to maintain a true conclusion, the premises might not happen as well. Now let's try to write conclusions from the following statements using the rules of inferences. Start with the first one. If you sleep early, then you will wake up early. If you wake up early, then you can finish your work on time. So for you to answer this or to write the conclusion from the given premises, so we can write them first into their propositional forms. So let's read it again. If you sleep early, then you will wake up early. So if you sleep early, that is P, or we can set it as P, then you will wake up early. So you will wake up early, we can write it as Q. So the first premise is what we have. If you sleep early, then you will wake up early. So if P, then Q. Next is if you wake up early, so again that's Q, then you can finish your work on time. So that is another proposition. So let's try to use R here. So we have R. So the premises that we have, if P then Q, if Q then R. Therefore, since the consequent of the first proposition or the first premise is the antecedent of the second premise, then we can say that if P, then R. So that will be, therefore, if you sleep early, then you can finish your work on time. So what did we apply here? So we apply here the hypothetical syllogism. So as you can see, again, we just write it first in forms or in their propositional forms, and then we're able to write our conclusion. So if you sleep early, you will wake up early. If you wake up early, then you can finish your work on time. So therefore, our conclusion is again, if you will sleep early, then you can finish your work on time. Next, Hannah will play volleyball or she will go out with her friends. So Hannah will not go out with her friends. So let's see what will be our conclusion here. So Hannah will play volleyball is P. She will go out with her friends, so that is Q. So it's either she will play volleyball or go out with her friends. But another premise states that Hannah will not go out with her friends. So what we have is P or Q and not Q. So therefore, if she is not going out with her friends, so what's left is Hannah will play volleyball, and that will be our conclusion. So therefore, Hannah will play volleyball. And what did we apply here? We applied here the disjunctive syllogism. So there is a disjunction given, and then one of the propositions from that disjunction were negated. So we have not Q. Therefore, whatever is left, that will be our conclusion, which is in this case is the P, or Hannah will play volleyball. Another one. If my dog observes something that excites him, then he barks. My dog does not bark. So what we have here is an implication. If my dog observes something that excites him, that's P, then he barks. So my dog barks, so that's Q. So if I will write it into its propositional form, if my dog observes something that excites him, then he barks. My dog does not bark. So that will be not Q. Now, since we negate the consequent, therefore, it means that our antecedent might not be happening also, because we negate the consequent, so that we will still hold true. So therefore, my dog didn't observe something that excites him. So what we applied here is the modus tollens. So since the dog does not bark, so that means the dog didn't observe something that excites him. Okay, so again, we use here the modus tollens. And last example, if this sponge contains lemon, then Vince will like it. If this sponge contains lime, then Steve will like it. This sponge contains either lemon or lime. Okay, so let's write it first in its propositional forms. If the sponge contains lemon, so this sponge contains lemon, so that's P. Then Vince will like it, so Vince will like it is Q. If the sponge contains lime, so it's a different proposition again, so let's say that's R. Then Steve will like it. So that's another proposition, let's say it's S. This sponge contains either lemon or lime. So let's write now the propositional form. If this sponge contains lemon, so that is P, then Vince will like it. Another one, if the sponge contains lime, so let's say R, then Steve will now like it. And it is now followed by this sponge contains either lemon or lime. Okay? So if either of our two antecedents might happen, that means we can say that either of our consequence might happen as well. So our conclusion now is, therefore, either Vince or Steve will like the punch. And what we applied here is what we call as the constructive dilemma. Okay, so we list down again the propositions, we write them into their propositional forms, we observe what's the relationship of the premises with one another, and we're able to write the conclusion, which is this one. So that's it for today. I hope you learned something about the rules of inferences and how to apply them to write logical conclusions based on the premises, and see you next time.